Birds, people, and the dogs that bring them together. This is episode number 12. My name is Bill, and you're tied to the Woe Post. Well, things are finally drying out here in central Indiana. We're back out on the fun runs and doing lots of yard work. We've got to be careful where we go out in the woods, though, because we have turkeys nesting, and I don't want to mess with that. And speaking of turkeys, tomorrow is the youth opener. My 11-year-old son, Connor, got access to a great farm, and we've been watching 4 or 5 big toms. By the time you're hearing this, hopefully we'll have a turkey in the freezer and a fan, beard, and some spurs drying out in the shed. Today we're talking Irish setters with Kelli Aitken of Quantanas Kennels. Irish setters are a color-bred breed out of Irish red and white setters. They're medium-sized dogs, with males averaging 23 inches and females around 21 inches, and 45 to 65 pounds, with males towards the upper end and females the lower end of the scale. They have a medium, well-furnished mahogany coat and a feathery tail. They're fast, rangy dogs with a happy temperament, and they're eager to please. Hey, Kelli, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, sir. I appreciate the invite.
Sir, nobody's called me sir in a long time. But you can actually see me, so maybe I look older than I feel.
I think we all feel older than we look, actually.
Yeah. You've been really busy lately. You're in Southern Illinois competing in a field trial. Tell us about what you're doing.
We are just about to kick off the National Red Setter Shooting Dog Championships down here in Pinckneyville, Illinois. It'll be a pair of horseback shooting dog championships with a futurity as well. So we'll be pretty busy. I think we drew about 70 dogs for the whole trial, which is a pretty darn good entry. And we're excited. It's going to be hot, though. These dogs are going to have some guts. It's going to be up in the 80s throughout the week. So we'll see what happens.
Did you say futurity?
Yeah. Yep. A futurity. It's a breeder's / money stake, essentially. So you're running young dogs, essentially derby aged dogs in it. And you'd have nomination fees and so on. And then the winner and the breeder of the winner and so on and so forth through 4th place get a piece of the prize money. It gets distributed to the placing dogs.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. And I am very naive to field trials. I've never competed in one. I've never even seen one. So yeah, I've heard of derbies before, but I did not know what a futurity was. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's where we all get rich, I'm sure. One day it'll happen.
Okay. Good luck with that.
Yeah, right.
So would you mind go ahead and introduce yourself? Give us kind of your background and your history with dogs and red setters.
Sure. My name is Kelli Aitken. I am a breeder of field bred Irish setters, also registered as American Field or FDSB red setters. So I dedicate my life to breeding, training, hunting, competing with my red dogs all over the country. My kennel name is Quantanas Irish Setters. I took that name over from my grandma, who used to breed German Shepherds under the kennel name of Quantanas back in the 60s and 70s. So it's a family kennel name for us. I've been active in Irish Setters since I was about 7 years old. And then I started in the show dog world. I have a very strong history in show dogs. And I've slowly progressed from show dogs to the field side. And I've been actively campaigning my own dogs for the past almost 10 years, and dabbling with other people's dogs to get experience before I had my own for the past about 13, 14 years. So it's been a shorter journey than some, but a very dedicated, heavily dedicated one.
When you say dedicated your life, I think people have to get a full appreciation for that. You're on the road full time, is that right?
In the summer of 2022, we sold everything. Our house, we traded in both our vehicles, an upgraded truck, and we bought a and we sold our old living quarters trailer and we bought a bigger living quarters horse trailer. And we travel the country full time, training, competing, hunting, doing all the things with our dogs. Everything we do is for the dogs, with the occasional fishing trip for my husband. So I gotta, keep the balance.
Everybody deserves a fishing trip every once in a while.
Yeah, he likes to remind me of that. So I try to make sure we get one of those, at least a good one, once a year.
And how many dogs are traveling with you guys full time?
Generally, I have between 8 and 10 dogs. It kind of fluctuates based on, as any nor average breeder does. They produce a litter and they keep a couple of the young dogs. Some breeders will keep the whole litter. I try to keep two or so, and then maybe three, and then I sort them out as time goes. So we fluctuate a bit with our young dogs as we develop and decide which ones are going to make the team and which ones need to go onto it, their own personal hunting/pet homes. So that's why it fluctuates so much.
Now, we're supposed to be talking about red setters, but I am extremely curious about how you whelp a litter of puppies while you're on the road.
So the living quarters in our trailer is quite big, and that's living quarters is like an RV. So the front part of the horse trailer is our living quarters, and I have a whelping box that fits in front of our bar stool/front door area. So it doesn't impede the walking through the house part. And I can't come in my front door, but I can come in my mid-tack door or back door to our horse trailer. So I block the front door when I'm whelping a litter, but it's worked well for us. I've done 2 litters in it now, but I've done a litter prior to this in a trailer before. So it becomes kind of easy once you get the hang of it. And I like the fact that I'm always very, very close, clearly very close to where my puppies are. So I'm very in tune to what's going on there.
Whelping a litter of puppies in your home, I think, can be a challenge. So and it is in your home, I guess, to be fair, but
Yep.
your home is a little bit more constrained, I would say, than most of ours.
Yeah, it's 8 feet wide by 17 feet long. But we do have a slide out that's 12 feet long, so it adds some space in there as well. So, but it's pretty small. It's pretty small. That's why I spend most of my time outside.
That sounds like dedication to me.
I'm pretty lucky to be able to do it. My husband works full time remote, so we are able to travel wherever we want to go, and he can, as long as he can use a Starlink, which is everywhere. That gives me the opportunity to go where I need to go to do what I need to do for our dogs. So it's quite the fortunate situation for me.
And you spent some time in the Army, right?
Yes, yeah, I did. I was in Army aviation from 2006 to 2012, and then I contracted through 2016. So, nope, 17. I lied. 2017 is when I ended my contracting. So I've been pretty active in Army aviation for a good stint of time, but that was enough of that. It was time to do something that lives did not depend on. So,
I can relate to that. I just retired this past summer, late summer, after
oh, congratulations.
thank you. And I there are parts of it that I miss, and there are people that I want absolutely 100% miss. But I look back with fondness. But
Yeah.
that chapter's over.
Right. I understand. I found that contracting kind of it was a way for me to enjoy some of the parts that I missed in being in, active duty. It brought, especially when we were deployed, I deployed as a contractor.
Mhm.
But I miss it in some parts, but as a whole, I am grateful to not be in, there or doing that anymore. So
So you mentioned that you got into Irish setters on the bench side. Can you
yes.
describe how that went at the age of 7?
So my grandma was a professional dog show handler. So I was going to dog shows. My first dog show was when I was less than 6 months old. I grew up in the dog show community and going to certain shows every year. And one year I was wandering around the show just looking at dogs, and I walked up to a dog on a grooming table, and it was this big, red, gorgeous Irish setter. And I introduced myself as the bold little kid I was back then to the breeder who has become my mentor and my pseudo mom. And that became a lifelong friendship for us. She mentored me through the breed. I've co-owned, co-bred litters with her. She's mentored me through all the breeding, all the aspects of breeding dogs. Everything I know about whelping and breeding and genetics is because of her. She's helped me learn all the things, and she's half the reason I am where I am. So, I really enjoyed handling dogs and showing dogs, and she is the reason I was good at it. So I'm pretty grateful for that.
Was she pretty specifically on the bench side?
Yeah, she is. She's an active show bench breeder.
Mhm.
She did a little bit of field work with a dog she had a while back, and that didn't at that time I wasn't excited or interested in that. But she focuses on conformation dogs and temperaments and health, and that's something that's always at my foundation. It's kind of led me to become who I am. So been a pretty neat area to be involved in.
So what got you over onto the field side?
When I went on my second deployment to Iraqistan, I had two Irish setters from her at the time, and I decided that I wanted to send them off to a field trainer because I figured if I was going to be out of the country doing productive things, I wanted my dogs to be able to do something stimulating and productive. And I didn't grow up in a hunting home. I'd never, other than the army and such, I'd never had a reason to be interested in guns or killing things. So I sent my dogs to a field trainer. And when I was deployed, what I would do is study the rule books for hunt tests and field trials. And I would read about hunt tests and field trials. And I took in every bit of information I could about them. And I decided when I got back, I wanted to try both hunt tests and field trials as well as hunting. I mean, if my dogs were going to be trained on game birds, I wanted to be able to go enjoy that with them. So I came home and I started to explore those different aspects, and I got hooked. And then, I had the showbred dogs at the time, and over the years, I started to watch these quicker, snappier, more animated dogs run around and find birds. And I thought that, I got more and more attracted to that picture. And then that combined with the longevity they offered, it just became something that really interested me. And I started to dabble my toes in the field side. And that was the beginning of the end for me.
Well, I think you're maybe selling yourself a little bit short because this is, so we're talking about somebody who was deployed and did some voracious reading and study, but you ended up as the 2022 Nationals champion 3 times.
Well, yeah, so we've had a couple real good years. I've won I won my two national amateur championships now. I've won one national field champion or open championship. I've won three walking championships. And then I've won multiple runner-up championships between American Field and AKC. So I've been very, very lucky. I blame my all that success on my ability to watch what other people are doing that's working and make that work for me and my dogs.
One thing that I will say on that, Kelly, is I think, you get lucky once or twice. I don't think you get lucky that many times. So maybe
Okay.
you don't want to brag, but I'm just gonna put that out there for you.
Okay, you're right. Part of it's luck. I feel like, the luck of the draw, the luck of, the weather that day when you run your dogs, so on and so forth. But you're right. I work really hard. And I've been lucky with the dogs I've bred, picking the right stud dogs and so on and so forth, but also finding the right mentors. That I think that's what can make or break any up and coming amateur person is having better mentors than others. So,
You mentioned that your bench mentor was about 50% of the kind kind of development. So who was the other 50%?
So that's been my mentor in the field is Trina Cardwell. And I have a couple others that I would attribute that to, but she's been my primary. I emulate her in handling style. I don't use quite the same training techniques as her, but we handle very similarly. I do everything I can to be as sportsmanlike as her and as quiet and collected with my dogs. I mean, it doesn't always go like that, but the goal is to be that. So, but she's given me the perspective and the outlook and the time and effort to develop me. She's put all that work into me as somebody who really just, I want to be better. And she does a very good job at telling me what I need to do better next time. So.
That's awesome. We talk on this podcast all the time about the importance of mentorship, particularly in the training and the breeding world. And it makes perfect sense that it's important to have a mentor in the competition side as well.
Yep, absolutely. I would agree.
So you still own bench dogs and of course your pack
Yeah.
of trials dogs, right?
Yeah, yes, correct. I co-own two showbred dogs, right? Nope, three show dogs right now. They're all actually in their retirement ages now. They're veteran dogs. And I keep telling myself, I've owned one or two younger show dogs because I'm hopeful one day I can have a dog that really excites me to show again, but it's gonna, they didn't quite develop how we wanted and so on and so forth. So they went to pet homes. And one day I might own another showbred dog again. It's gonna take the right dog for me. So, I'm not in a hurry and I'll wait for the right dog to come along. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm not hard pressed to go and win at a show again. So, one day at a time and just keeping my eyes on what's being produced and maybe I'll get one again.
Any ambition to try and produce the next Irish setter dual champion?
Yes and no. So I don't think I'll ever produce that dog. That's a challenging area. Could I have contributed to some dogs that could have been dual champions, both in the handling and the both on both sides of the fence. Like I've finished show champions that could probably have made their way towards a dual championship, and I've handled some dogs to field wins that could have been, dual champions. It's a hard game to play, and the challenge I think is that you have to pick the side that you're going to be stronger in. Are you going to be stronger in the field and struggle more with the show? Or are you going to be stronger in the show and really have to fight your battle in the field? There's dogs out there who have really successfully done both, but in Irish setters, it is probably, in my opinion, Irish setters are the hardest to attain that balance of power. The breeds like Vizslas and Brittany's and short hairs, they can be, they're very, very, it's common to find those dual champion prospects. Gordon setters, there's a big handful these days. And English setters, it's not quite as common. But I feel like the prospect is still there and a little stronger.
I think there's a pretty big disparity between the bench Irish setters and the field Irish setters. Whereas kind of with some of those other breeds, particularly the French and the German breeds that you mentioned, the untrained eye might not notice a difference between
Right.
between a
Yes.
hunting dog and a show dog, short hair, for example. But it doesn't take a trained eye to figure out the difference between a long-haired Irish setter and a field-bred Irish setter, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's this difference is there, and those dogs can do it. There's dogs in the show ring that could do it. It's just getting them into finding the money to support them through that and getting them started early enough in life and so on and so forth. So, until somebody steps up and commits to doing that part, it's going to continue to be a battle. And I'm cheering for it. I hope we see more dual champion Irish setters. I just know that I won't be the one producing them. I'm happy to help in any way I can. I just will not be breeding them.
Right. I say, give those big dogs a haircut and get them out in the field and see what they can do.
Exactly. I love seeing that. Love it.
We have this vernacular between red setter and Irish setter. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Okay, I'm going to tread lightly here because it's a very heated, tension-filled, debated topic.
Sure.
In my opinion and my experience, the only difference between a field bred Irish setter that has AKC registration. So when I say field bred Irish setter, I'm referring to an AKC dog, and a red setter is that the breeder of the field bred Irish setter maintained their paperwork. Whereas the red setter person who didn't continue their AKC registration did not obviously maintain their paperwork. They stopped. There's other differences in there. There's other genetic contributions in there, but in the broad spectrum of things, like I have AKC fieldbred Irish setters, and I am running at a red setter championship this week. I compete in those red setter championships regularly. I compete in all breed, like pointer led shooting dog classics regularly, and I'm competitive. So the difference is that there is no the difference is purely paperwork in the grand scheme of things. There's exceptions, but in the grand scheme of things, that's what I would say the difference is.
That makes perfect sense. And, in my world, we have small Munsterlanders and kleine Munsterlanders, and I'm on the small Munsterlander side, but within, in my kennel and within my breeder network that I choose to generally associate with, we have very high breeding standards. And I would argue that although some of the tools that we use to select which dogs are breeding stock and which aren't might be a little different than the FCI side, we have very high standards that would correlate with theirs. So
Right.
I believe wholeheartedly that I can produce just as good of a small Munsterlander as some of the best kleine Munsterlanders out there.
Right. And that's, and you go toe to toe with them and they compete on the same level, and that tells you everything you need to know. Another analogy I use is that all Irish setters can be registered as red setters, but not all red setters can be registered as Irish setters.
How smart are you on the history of Irish setters?
I know some. There's an intense history, and it started back. We if we look back far enough, we see that the Irish and the Irish red and white were one and the same, and the native breeders began to develop just the red ones and the red and white separately. So they bred for the red. Over that was probably in the 1800s, mid 1800s ish. The Irish setter was the premier hunting dog at the time. Historically, we found that to be affected once they started becoming the choice of bench fanciers. We saw the decline of the hunting ability of the Irish setter, and that would have been through the late 1890s and even into the early to mid 1900s is the epitome of the downfall of the field and working bred Irish setter. And that's where we begin the split between the red setter and the Irish setter. A group of people, mostly gentlemen, decided that they wanted to focus on reestablishing the breed's strength in the field, and they were able to do some outcrossing to encourage those traits and improve the breed in that aspect. I'll be very specific about that. Improve the breed in that aspect. So, and therefore that's kind of where the split began. People wanted the breed to still have that working ability that they were developed for, whereas other people were excited to be successful in the show ring. So, it's hard to have both of those things. So, that's essentially what I'll give you on my history of the Irish setter. There's a lot of opinion in there, and there's a lot of disagreement in there, but the breed obviously got very, very popular in the mid to late 1900s. what I hear most often when I'm out and about with my dogs is, well, my grandpa had an Irish setter, or my dad had an Irish setter. You hear that so often. It's not surprising that most of these people that are telling me the stories will often tell me it was the dumbest dog, or it was an idiot, or what, just because they were so common back then and so popular that they were being bred so indiscriminately that there was no, they weren't breeding for brains and temperament and health. They were breeding them because they had testicles and ovaries. And that is as we know, is one of the downfalls of any breed, is when it becomes the popular breed, of the moment, the quality gets really, what am I saying?
Gets watered down.
Thank you. That's the phrase I was looking for. The quality gets watered down. You got to really search to find those good dogs. So I'm grateful that the breed did become what it became, because then I got into it and here I am. And that's the history of the Irish setter in the eyes of somebody who treads lightly.
Well, I wasn't going to tell you, but now I will since you brought it up, that I have had two previous podcast guests that have said something to the effect of, if I wanted a dumb dog, I'd have gotten an Irish setter.
Oh, that's fighting words right there.
Shots fired. I understand.
If this breed didn't have the brains that it had, I would not own them. I cannot tolerate dumb dogs. I don't do well with that. I expect my dogs to try hard and to catch on as quickly as possible. And so they'll just have to come meet me and my dogs, and maybe they'll learn a little bit.
I love the look of, well, I mean, really of any setters. And honestly, like my Munsterlander, who's fairly well furnished because nobody knows what a small Munsterlander is, she's sometimes mistaken for a setter. I love the look of those medium length furnishings.
Yes.
And
Yep.
a red setter. My wife and I were sitting down looking at pictures of Irish setters yesterday, and we both agree, like, they are just such beautiful dogs.
Yeah, it's hard to beat the looks, and you combine that with a darn good brain and a spectacular temperament and an on-off switch, and I'm a sucker. Like that's it. Give me a biddable, kind, funny dog who wants to lay on the couch next to me and then kick my butt in the field, and plus looks like they look on point, and I'll take it. Like I mean, how can I go wrong?
No. If you're breeding right and you're networking with other breeders that are breeding correctly, then you're going to find the right dog for you and your purposes.
Absolutely.
Besides the fact that you're traveling full time, what really makes you different between your kennel and other red setter, Irish setter kennels?
There's not a lot of breeders out there who both field trial and hunt their dogs on wild birds. And that comes down to time. I mean, if somebody's going to be a wild bird hunter with their dogs and produce dogs that do that, then they often don't take the time to dabble in field trials. And if somebody's dedicating themselves to field trialing with their dogs and the dogs they're producing, they often don't have time to go hunting. I work very, very hard at not only having wild bird dogs, but field trial, broke, front running, good, strong running field trial dogs as well. So like I want that. I want both. And that's not everybody. It's there. People do it. But it's not common. And I think that's kind of one of the aspects that I excel in, that I'm strong at, is doing both with my dogs.
When you're talking about hunting with your dogs, are you talking about foot hunting or are you hunting off horseback or?
Mostly foot hunting.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people fail to realize, is that my horseback championship dogs darn well better hunt for me on foot. And they're going to run big on foot, but they're still going to handle for me on foot. I don't need to I'm never going to go chase one of my dogs down while I am hunting on foot. So they're going to handle, and they're going to adjust their fire. They're capable of doing both things.
Sure. And I mean, you've already more or less culled the dogs for that adaptable temperament to be able to figure that out and hunt with you as a cooperative hunting partner.
Yep, absolutely. And in my opinion, if the dog isn't smart enough to be able to adjust like that, how is the dog going to be smart enough to remember training? Like, if that dog's not smart enough to realize the difference between me on a horse and me on foot, then it shouldn't be realize the difference between being broke on a bird and being unbroke on a bird. So, they have to have brains. They have to be able to catch on.
What are some standout dogs that you've had out of your kennel? And I know you've got a litany of field champions to pull from, but out of that, I'd say that's a pretty good situation to be in. What are some of the dogs that stand out for you?
Reason is my obvious pick dog. That's Quantanis reciprocal, and her call name's Reason. She's won horseback and walking championships for me. She's been in the placements and shooting dog classics between pointers and setters, field bred pointers and setters. She's excelled in the wild bird aspect. She retrieves to hand beautifully. She's a spectacular wild bird dog, and the temperament is, I let her out of the house, also known as a trailer, to go potty, and she walks out, goes potty, and comes back in. I'll walk around and be loading stuff, and she'll just hang out with me. She's not a runoff, but she'll make 4 to 600 yard casts when I'm running her in a field trial. So she's going 400 to 600 yards at times. I mean, that's big. Sometimes it's more towards 400 these days, but she's capable of doing it all, and she's just so easy to live with. So easy to live with. She's my hands down the best. She's been everything I could ask for, and she's produced pretty well for what I've bred her to. I'm very grateful for what I have out of her. So that's my best. Her brother Cooler, so that litter was obviously very, very important for me. Her brother Cooler is a 3-time national champion, once in the amateur and twice in the open. He's the epitome of powerhouse. That dog has no bottom. He's wild and exciting, and he's the kind of dog that makes judges sit up in their saddle and pay attention. But his record speaks for itself. His temperament is, these dogs get along with males, females, whatever. They're just so easy to be around, and they're funny. Gosh darn, Cooler's just the toughest dog. And I don't mean tough like hard to break. I mean, like, he's so happy when we were breaking him out and he makes a mistake and you're giving him a correction for that. He's wagging his tail like, like a masochist, like he likes it. And it's not like we're, being super rough on him, but like, he doesn't take anything serious, and that's a true Irish temperament right there. That's the kind of temperament I want. I mean, it's kind of hard to deal with when you're breaking them out. It can be a little challenging because I'm like, I need you to realize that this is a serious moment, and he just is laughing in his own way. So those two dogs are hands down really important in my program. And the other dog I would say is their grandsire Tate, and I didn't breed Tate. My mentor Trina did. But Tate, well, actually, no, Bonnie and Dennis Hidalgo bred Tate, from Firefly Kennels. But Trina owned Tate for a long time, and he'll be 15 years old in September, and he's still tooting around like nobody's business. And without him, we wouldn't have my kennel. I mean, my dogs. He's the reason. And he's a tough old dog, and he didn't win a whole lot. He had a couple great moments, but he's a good wild bird dog. He was a tough dog, and just took corrections and was really easy to go forward with. Resilient, and that's something that's hard found in our breed sometimes. So yeah, those would be my three, I think.
He doesn't have to be a field champion to produce field champions.
Exactly. And he has done enough and contributed enough. He will always be worth it. We're grateful for Grandpa Tate.
Funny, as you were talking about Cooler, you basically, you mentioned that he's a pretty lighthearted dog. I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody describe a dog that way.
And he is. I mean, you can't. And his daughter, I have his daughter here, and she's the same way. She just thinks everything's real nice and funny, and if there's air around, she's happy. That's all it takes. So they're easy to please.
Yeah, I'm thankful, always thankful that temperament is highly heritable because that
Yes.
sounds like something that I would want to pass on as much as I could.
Right. It's important to have, and we appreciate we appreciate that aspect in these dogs.
So, what are your plans, your kind of bigger plans for the rest of the year? What have you got going on?
Well, so right now we're at the Red Setter. It starts on Sunday. Today is Thursday? So, in a couple days it'll start. After the Red Setter, I judge a championship in Colorado, and then I beat feet to Oregon because why not? But it's the AKC National Gun Dog Championship. It's a horseback and walking championship for all breeds. So I'm going to go compete on grounds I've never been in or been on, with my dogs and try to compete, and get a placement at the AKC All Breed National. I think that would be my reason dog. She's 9.5 and she's never got to compete in that, because the timing has just never worked out for me. And so now I'm going to drive, 1,800 miles across the country to go take her to compete because I feel like she deserves to be seen, in that championship and to be given the chance. And I hope she'll be competitive. We'll see. We'll see what happens. They're not robots, they're dogs. So mistakes happen. But I'm doing this for her because, she doesn't have another 9.5 years. So I'm trying to give her these opportunities to establish as big of a legacy as she can in the breed.
Get out there and take them by storm, right?
Yeah, yep. And then after that, we'll be hanging out up in the Pacific Northwest until summer camp, and we do that out of Ainsworth, Nebraska. So we'll spend the summer in Nebraska on wild birds, hopefully, if the population's good. And then we do some hunting and then swing into field trial season.
Are you going to destinations to hunt, or are you just kind of hunting where you are?
Well, it just depends. Sometimes we kind of will find, sometimes there's areas nearby to where we're going or on the way, and that works out. And sometimes we go a little out of our way. I think part of it depends on, like, last year, summer camp bird numbers were really low. So we made a very long trip to an area that I was confident had a very good bird population
Hmm.
to compensate for the lack of wild bird encounters I had at summer camp, and it paid off. And when you can get your 8 and 12 week old puppies on a wild covey of Huns, you're doing okay in your development program. Like,
Sure.
you
Oh,
can't
yeah.
go wrong with that. Just depending on how the season goes is how I'm going to adjust fire for hunting. So, our fall schedule can also affect what we're doing, because if we have a heavy fall, we're probably going to go a little lighter in our early hunting and then hunt later within, the Kansas area, stay pretty local to Kansas, in the late season. I tend to enjoy hunting our home grounds. So,
Kansas has become very friendly for moving around and hunting. I spent a few days this past fall in Kansas on my way out to Colorado. Decided to spend a few days there when I understood how easy it is for that walk-in hunter access program.
oh yeah, the Weehaw is a spectacular way to be able to utilize ground. It's so easy to follow. It took me, like, last year we hunted Montana, and it took me a little bit to understand the difference between their blocks, type 1, type
Hmm.
2, all these different aspects. It's I mean, it's easy enough, but it's not as easy and simple to understand as this is. So, or as the Weehaw in Kansas is. So,
Right.
we can all only wish it was that simple.
I'm thinking what I want to try and do in Kansas this fall is head on out around the, probably not during the rifle opener because I'm dead set against trying to hunt deer on the rifle opener, but sometime during firearm season for deer in Kansas, going out to, find the right weehaw property, hunt deer in the morning and then either, quail or prairie chicken or pheasants if I'm in a pheasant area, in the
Yeah.
afternoon. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt at all. The areas that are kind of like my home area, like, generally we don't see very many pheasants, and that's not my forte necessarily to chase pheasants. But quail and prairie chickens are on my agenda. Those are my species of choice if I could choose, just because I feel like I can get the best dog experience on them. That's what I want to develop my dogs with. Old gentleman Bob, he's gonna make or break these young dogs, and then those chickens aren't gonna take that pressure later in the season. And it's great for a dog who needs to learn to stay off their game a bit. So the opportunity to be on those two species is hard to beat for me.
We might be hunting some of the same areas, and maybe after we're done recording, maybe talk about that for a second.
Yeah, we could share some hot spots.
Right,
We'll
right
make them
on.
cold spots because we won't talk about them publicly.
Exactly. But the cool thing is anybody can do it. If you use Onyx or one of the equivalents, and you're willing to hop out on the road and do some. I mean, I tent camp when I get out on the road. It's pretty easy to do in the areas where I go.
Yeah.
It's not hard to get out and find access to really good hunting areas.
Yep, it's not hard at all. It's a bummer when areas that you have found and liked and had success at are spoken about publicly. So I've seen the downfall of a couple of my favorite areas because of that. And so we all try to take care of the areas we go to and respect the land and so on. Hopefully people that find these spots via social media or on their own luck continue to do that as well, so we can preserve these opportunities for the years to come.
You guys have a full-time YouTube channel as well, right?
We do. My husband is the force behind that. He really enjoys making videos, and he's gotten darn good at his editing and making them flow real well, and the sound and effects and the music and all the things. So he does that at Redbeard Outdoors on YouTube. And it's hard because since he started, somebody else created a Redbeard Outdoors as well. But ours is the one with Irish setters, so you can't go wrong. Horse trailer and Irish setters, you won't miss it. He likes to do field trial videos from our experiences. And what's nice is that I've been to field trials before, and people have come up and said, I got to learn more about field trials because of your videos. And that's kind of nice for people that have never been to one or want to learn more about them. Those field trial videos can be informative. And there's some of the ones that cover like the basics of field trialing and the basics of bird dogs and working dogs and stuff. And so it's a good educational tool for people who haven't had the opportunity to actually attend a field trial.
Yeah, I think they're pretty fun to watch. I watched a few over the last week or so, and a lot of the ones that I watch are GoPro footage from on the horse, which I thought was really cool, a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, it's different for a lot of people, no doubt.
So we've been on for a little while now. What do you think are some closing thoughts?
Well, I mean, when it comes to my breed, figure out what you want to be doing with your dog and then choose dogs that do what you want to do. Find a breeder that's doing what you want to do with your dog and get a dog from them. There's a lot of propaganda that say that the showbred Irish setters can't hunt, and that's not necessarily true. It's just a different style of hunting. And if you like that, then pursue that opportunity. If you like hunting at a preserve, find people that have the dogs that look like you want them to look on point and walk behind their dogs and get a dog from them. Most of the field Irish/red setter people will help you find what you're looking for. We're generally not a you have to buy a puppy from me kind of people. I'm a huge believer there's a right fit for every person. And if my dog or my breed isn't right for you, I'm going to do everything I can to help you find what is a good fit. So that's probably my biggest thing is one shoe size does not fit every foot. You got to adjust your style, or adjust your choice for what's going to suit your style.
You're always investing more in the breeder than you are in the dog.
Yep. And there's nothing like having a good breeder that you can have a conversation with when you have a training issue or a temperament question or whatever it might be. And some breeders are more prone to doing that and some aren't. And if you don't need that support, then that's okay. You can buy from a breeder who isn't necessarily as open with that communication. You just got to do your homework and get what suits you.
How can people contact you if they want to follow Quantonis Kennels?
They can go on my website, and that's quantanis.com, as well as our YouTube that my husband runs, and that's Red Beard Outdoors. And then in addition, I have my Instagram and TikTok, and they're both my TikTok is Quantanis, and my Instagram is Quantanis_Irish. So there's a plethora of ways among social media and other ways. So you can't not find us if you're looking.
You're the first person to plug their TikTok on the Woe Post. So
It's not massive, but it's got a lot of good info, and well, and some good videos, I guess, and short videos. So
that's awesome.
yeah, somebody might enjoy it.
I'm sure there's somebody out there. So Kelli, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time, and good luck in the trials coming up.
Thank you very much, sir. You take care.
I hope you enjoyed episode number 12 of the Woe Post. And if you did, head on over to your podcast platform of choice and leave a 5-star review. To support the podcast, share it with a friend, or just share it with all your friends. Then go to patreon.com/thewoepost and become a patron. You can always contact me at my website, www.thewoepost.com, on Facebook or Instagram at The Woe Post, or by email, bill@thewoepost.com. Stay steady and God bless.